Hi everyone! I'm Mailu from Plans by Lulu and welcome on my channel. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and let's go! Today is another PLOOKS, Plans and Books and I'm very excited. I wanted to talk about this book for a while. And a small disclaimer, the pairing of the book and the plant does not reflect where they stand in my planned or book list. So if I chose a book, that does not mean it's in my top 3, and it does not mean that the plant I paired it with is also in my top 3. It's fully separated from my ranking of plants and books. So without further ado, let's introduce the book. It is Death in Spring by Merce. I would say it Merce, but I think it's because it's Spanish, so I think it's Merce Rodoreda. First, I will read something about the book and then something about the author. Death in Spring is a dark and dreamy-like tale of a teenage boy coming of age in a remote village in the Catalanian mountains, a place cut off from the outside world, where cruel customs are blindly followed and attempts at rebellion swiftly crushed. When his father dies, he must navigate this oppressive society alone and learn how to live in a place of crippling conformity. Often seen as an allegory for life under a dictatorship, Death in Spring is a bewitching and unsettling novel about power, exile, and the hope that comes from even the smallest gestures of independence. Before reading something about the author, I want to read a quote from the back from a reader that kind of sums up this book for me. The quote goes as follows: "Read it for its beauty, for the way it will surprise and subvert your desires, and as a testament to the human spirit in the face of brutality and willful inhumanity." From Jasmine Ward. I will come back to this quote, but for now, something about the author. Merche Rodoreda was born in Barcelona in 1908. During the Spanish Civil War, she was exiled to France and later Switzerland. Rodoreda was able to return to Barcelona only in the mid-1960s, where she wrote several prize-winning novels in Catalan, including Death in Spring, which was inspired by her experience of Franco's dictatorship. Rodoreda died in 1983, a few years before Death in Spring first publication, and is widely regarded as the most important Catalan writer of the 20th century. Now I'm going immediately to the plants section because I want to explain the reason. This edition is quite special because I have decided to pair this book not with one plant, but with 2 plants. And I don't have their names with me, so I will write them down below. But I know there are 2 types of ficus. These 2. As you can see, they're both variegated. That has also a reason. But for now, let's talk a bit about the book. I don't want to give spoilers, so I'm not going to go into details, but I will describe some important points in this book. Again, we follow the main character through adolescence and then he grows up and we also follow him into adulthood. And as the book describes, it is an allegory for life under a dictatorship. Also, it's a bit unsettling and it's about the exile and small parts or small detailed things that can give a sliver of hope. Some idea of independence, which it seems like we people crave. So it is a very intense book. If you are very easily triggered or don't like to read like crazy stuff that can happen in real life, then this is not the book for you. I want to preface that. And my relationship with this book is a bit complicated in the sense that I really struggled through this book. With my anthropological background, I'm very understanding of things and the way they are, because there's almost always a reason behind it and a logical explanation, and it doesn't make up for it, but it's like an explanation on why things the way they are. Reading this made my anthropological mind very curious, but my sensitive, intuitive, basic ideas in my brain, let's call it that, was kind of appalled by this book during the beginning and the middle section. It is a very slow read. A lot of aspects are repeated. In my mind, just to give you the sense that in the beginning, on first glance, everything is okay. Everything is normal. Everything looks alright. So for me, who likes more heavy books, like more, maybe how other people would call it, boring, like I like books that delve into random people's lives and be very specific and like show their everyday life and their everyday things and how they are human, how they move through the world. But for somebody that likes that, this was a hard read. I'm not going to, not even abstractly going into the details of the end, because it's a very epiphany moment for me. It was as a reader. So I really, if you decide to read this book, really don't want to spoil that epiphany moment. But after reading the end, after going through that journey, I understand why I needed to go through everything I've read from this book to land where I landed at the end. So in my mind, even though it was a very struggle, even though, you know, it is a love-hate relationship with this book, I understand why I needed to read that and why the pacing is the way it is, why things are repeated the way they are, why everything is the way that it is in this book. Which, if you think about it, is a very hard thing to accomplish as a writer. So that's like my thoughts on this book. The reason why I paired it with not one but two plans is the duality of a dictatorship. I can show you what they represent, and that also ties in what the variegation represents. And a dictatorship, often the things that seem normal to them are not normal for us. That happens to a certain extent when you look at different cultures. But most of our brains can rationalize that by saying that's a different culture or that are different customs. But because this book is fiction, that was hard in the beginning for me. You have to understand when you talk about a dictatorship that the people under that dictatorship rule don't know better. They are so conditioned through years and years and years that A, they don't know any better. B, they never learn to critical think about stuff. So for them, it's normal. And that is what this plant representing. This plant is representing the order within the customs and the order within the rule, the dictatorship rule, and the easygoingness of the people under that dictatorship rule. Are they happy? You don't know. Are they not rebelling in their own way? You don't know. However, they're just doing what they're told. They almost rarely question why. They just believe that that's the way it is because their dictator is the grand leader. That is what this plant is standing for. Now, why did I choose this specific plant? Because this plant, in its own weirdness, follows its own structure and its own rules. If I want to care for this plant, everything goes south. I honestly don't know how to care for this plant, and I think I have it almost a year now. As you can see at the back, it doesn't have a lot of leaves. That's because this plant, when I got this plant, it was still here and it was full with leaves. I may have a photo, I don't know, I will show it if I have it. I tried everything in this past year with caring for the plant. I have moved it to different spots in the house. I have changed the watering to more to little. There was one point that it almost let all his leaves fell off. And honestly, I had given up on this plant. Miraculously, I just neglected this plant. There was a week where I watered it 3 times and then 2 weeks nothing, and then I watered it again and then maybe a week nothing, and then again 2 times in a week, and then it started to grow. I honestly still don't know why or how I have to care for this plant, but it is still alive. That is kind of the comparison I'm going to make with the book. There are different rules, which I don't really understand. There are also different rules in the world the author created that I don't understand. If your brain runs on logic, and mostly logic, then this is really going to test your patience, which is also the case with this plant. It really tested my patience, and I still have not figured out what this plant needs, how to care for it. I'm just going along with it and just sometimes neglect it. And that's what I had to do with this book. I had to go along with everything, even though I could not follow the logic anymore. So that's the reason why I paired it with the first plant. Now the second plant. I have paired it with this plant because in this book, even though it's a world I don't understand, with things I don't really understand, there was beauty in things. Some customs had beauty in them. The writer is illustrating a world that is beautiful there. Nature there is very beautiful. Even man-made things are beautiful. Some relationships that are forming are in their own way beautiful. And so that depicts this plant. And the variegation in both, you can see in this plant there's more variegation than in that plant. The variegation represents the strictness, the sternness. This is more chaotic. That one, because the plant represents a structure, has less variegation because in structure there is less creativity, there's less chaos. This is more chaotic. The plant is growing more chaotic. This stands for the beauty in all the craziness and the weirdness of it. And this plant is not that hard to figure out. And I want to compare it with the main character of this because you are going to see the main character in different stages and with different beliefs. The main character is as straightforward as you can get on paper. I think the main character also represents every person that goes through change and that has his or her own thoughts and has the desire to kind of rebel at a young age, and also the way how people get older. We accept more things, we just accept how everything is. We don't resist so much anymore as we did in our youth. I think that is what this one is representing. And now the fact that I chose both. It's the duality. There are some customs that benefit the people, that are beautiful. There are some moments, there are beautiful things that people there created, which they probably wouldn't have created if they weren't under that dictatorship. So that's this plant, that's the beauty. But you can't have that beauty without the fact that it is made within that dictatorship. You always need that larger structure. There is some type of structure in things. Even in chaos, there can be structure. So yeah, I hope you like this episode of PLOOKS. I am very curious if you are tempted to read this book or if you are interested in reading this book. And if you have book and plant recommendations, or if you want me to discuss a specific book or a specific plant, leave that down in the comments below. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe and the like button. And I will see you in the next video. Doei!